Hi guys, and welcome to AA35, a channel about living life fully, especially if you're over 35. Now, a huge part of what we do on this channel is building the foundations of health, relationships, and psychology, and a large part of that will be creating change. Now, to create change, very often we need goals, and since we're headed into the year 2021, the last session we started a series just on goals and resolutions. Now, in that video, we saw why goals alone can be pretty useless, and even if you achieve them, they create only temporary change. Now, what we want is change that lasts and keeps on giving. And to do that, we'll start to focus not on goals, but on process. And that process is building a system of tiny habits. Have you ever had something you wanted to share so much, you wanted to write a book just so you could reach a great number of people? And then you found out that someone else had already done it and done it so well, you simply didn't have to. Well, I've had that happen to me twice in my life. The first was a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. The second, and more relevant to what we're talking about today, is a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. Now, that book is an extremely satisfying read, full of memorable and also actionable quotes. And in particular, I want to share with you two concepts that I've used over the last 20 years to help people create lasting change, whether it was in personal training, physiotherapy, nutrition, and now life and relationships. And those are 1. The power of tiny habits, and 2. Creating a system of those habits. 1. Atomic habits. First, let's talk about tiny habits, or what James Clear calls atomic habits. Now, most of us think in terms of big results coming from big actions. So, if we have an important goal, we'll do something really drastic and dramatic because we want a huge bang. So, if we use the example of, say, weight loss, think join a high-end gym, sign up for 10 classes a week, count every single calorie, and weigh every single gram of food. Well, in reality, big results come from tiny improvements, each barely noticeable, but compounded over time. So think instead, a brisk walk after every dinner, a full glass of water before every meal, and eating only when hungry, a crazy concept I know, every day. Now here's a fascinating bit of math from the book. If you were just to improve 1% every single day for a year, well, at the end of that year, you'll have achieved a 38-fold improvement over your baseline. Now 1% is barely noticeable, but years later, you'll experience the effect of this compounding. Now I'm sure you've heard of the power of compounding your money. Well, imagine the same for your health, your fitness, your work or business, your relationships. Conversely, if you were to deprove or get worse by 1% a day, well, over the course of a year, you'll have dwindled to about 0.03 of your baseline, or to almost nothing. Now, these little 1% are your habits. When you repeat them, they compound over time. If you save $1 today, it doesn't seem like much. If you hit that treadmill for 10 minutes, hey, that's like nothing. If you take an evening out with your son, that's enjoyable and effortless. Perform one act of service for your girlfriend, hey, that's easy to do. So we tend to dismiss these actions because they're so small and barely noticeable. But because they're unnoticeable, they're not noticeable, they're also painless. And because they're painless, they're easy to do and to repeat again and again and again. And if you trust in the process, you'll reap the rewards down the road. Oftentimes, massive rewards. Now, of course, habits can work against as well as for you. So on the flip side, think instead, oh, it's just one donut today. And then tomorrow, oh, it's only one roll of M&Ms. And we know where that's headed, don't we? And sadly, I also know of a lot of people who kept cancelling on their kids because it's just this one time, right? It's just this one business meeting, or it's just this one day of overtime. And years later, they found out that they've been supplanted by someone else. Now, there's a quote from the book that I really love, and it's from Jacob Riis. And here's what it says: "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stone cutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet, at the 101st blow, it will split in two, and I know that it was not that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before." Now, the initial changes won't bring any noticeable effect, but you keep repeating that, and when you reach a critical threshold, big results will seem to explode just out of nowhere. Now, James Clear calls these small habits atomic habits because they're so tiny, and yet they form a part of a bigger collective, like molecules. And atomic habits are a regular routine of easy-to-do behaviors that lead to compounding growth. So, we know now what atomic habits are. Here's what I'd like you to do until our next video. For each of your major goals, write down a few small, easy-to-do habits that might not seem noticeable, but you can easily repeat and sustain, but have a cumulative impact on each of your goals. Just do that for now, because what we're trying to do is to establish good habits. Now, writing down habits is of course one thing, but establishing those habits, now that's the trick, isn't it? How do we do that? Well, that's what we'll talk about in our next video, but for now, I really need you to understand why we need to first build a system of those habits. 2. A system of habits. When I was just a personal trainer, I could motivate and train a client all day long as he was with me. But life happens between sessions, and sometimes when life gets in the way, everything goes out the window. And it's the same not just with personal training, but in things like physiotherapy, nutrition, relationships, you name it. Now, using fitness as an example, what do? Well, as coaches, we don't focus on individual actions or sometimes even plans and programs. Of course, that's important, but we take a whole person approach. So we also have to consider things like the person's individual situation, their motivation levels, their commitment levels, their energy levels, and also their social support systems. And then, taking all these into consideration, we create a system that will fit into their ecology painlessly and hopefully easily. We use the fact that tiny habits performed consistently will achieve greater results than one or two huge efforts like a 3-hour workout or a full day fast but performed only sporadically. So, you've identified some habits. What we need to do next is to create a system that helps you make these habits easy, imperceptible, and in fact almost automatic. You see, pursuing a goal creates temporary change, but building a system, pursuing the creation of this system is what will give you lasting change. Cool. The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's not about any single accomplishment. It's about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. Ultimately, it's your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't have goals. In fact, as humans, I think we need to have something to shoot for, to energize us, to galvanize us, to even motivate us to think about making some kind of change. But that future achievement is not what we should be focused on. Instead, the focus is on building a system of habits that will help towards the achievement of that goal. Habits that we're going to continue to refine and to make more automatic. Now, I quote, again, there's just so many great quotes from this book. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Now, when you're working on a goal, especially a new one, trying to do new behaviors and to create new habits, well, when you're encountering some kind of new stress in your life or illness or any kind of crisis, you don't have the resources to keep on adapting and still be able to sustain those goals. You'll find that you'll fall back on the habits that you've automatically done day in and day out for over years. And that's why we're trying to build a system of habits that will be automatic, because once in place, this system of habits will help you out no matter what's going on in your life. They free you from having to continually exert willpower. And as I explained in my video, The Elephant, the Rider, and the Path, willpower is a finite resource that we really want to conserve. Now, understand this very important distinction. When you focus on goals, you're focusing on something that you have ultimately no control over, an outcome. That's an outcome-based mode of thinking. But when you focus on building a system, now you're focused on something you do have control over, your habits. And each of your habits performed regularly, consistently, and painlessly is like taking baby steps and building a very solid foundation stone by stone. And because they're baby steps, you can enjoy and experience the process, knowing that the results that you want will ultimately flow from that. So let me end with a few more great quotes. There's just so many from the book. If you're a coach, your goal is to win a championship. Your system is what your team does at practice each day. If you're a runner, your goal is to run a marathon. Your system is your training schedule for the month. If you're an entrepreneur, your goal is to build $1 million business. Your system is your sales and marketing process. You are never going to be truly successful until you have a working system that guides your actions and helps you achieve your goals. Alright, so we've seen in part 1 why just goals alone won't work. They're pretty useless and even counterproductive. In part 2 today, we got you thinking about the idea of tiny habits, and we want you, hopefully, to start thinking up of your list of habits, your own list of atomic habits that will help you in your goals. And in part 3 next time, we'll look at creating a system of those habits. Please subscribe, hit that notifications button, and I'll see you really soon.